Hello, I hope you are doing well. I am doing great. Thanks for asking. Today, we will build a simple counter using ambiorix. And basically, on the front end, we are going to have a button when clicked. Well, it's kind of counting the number of button clicks actually. So when the button is clicked, we are going to increment a number on either a div or a p tag in the UI, by one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, etc, right? So let's get to it. So I'm going to cd into my projects directory, and let's create a directory here called counter. Let's cd into counter, and then I'm going to open this in tmax, obviously. So tmax new session, I'm going to call it counter, and let's create a hello world program as usual, right? So we are going to do nvim index.r. And then in index.r, first of all, I'm going to switch off the diagnostics. They are a bit annoying. And then let's library ambiorix, right? And then I'm also going to library HTML tools. Then I am going to create a handler, so called homeGet. It's going to be a function. Oh God, if I can get this right. So it's going to be a function of request and response, and it's going to have some HTML. So we are going to say tags subset h1, let's say hello world, and then we are just going to send that HTML, right? Then I always prefer having some sort of function documentation, kind of a habit. So here we are going to say this is handler forget @/ right? And then of course, if it were in another module, I would prefer if it was exported. So that's it. And then we are going to create our app instance. So app is going to be ambiorix subset new. Then let's attach the home get. So any get request @ should be handled by home get. And we are going to start our application on port 3000. This is, port 3000. So let's test and see if we have our hello world program. Okay, there we go. So this is hello world. Now we didn't come here for the hello world, so the first thing that we are going to do is switching this hello world to be counter, right? We want to have a counter, and below the counter we are going to have, well, the count. So let's wrap this in maybe a tag list for now. So this is going to be a tag list. It will have the h1 containing the counter, and then below that we are going to have a p tag, and in this p tag we are going to have current count will be tags subset strong. So here let's have the count. For now we are just going to go with 0, right? So this should show the current count is 0. So let's try it again. Yep, so the current count is 0, right? And then below this count, I want us to have a button. So tags subset button. And the label of this button is going to be as simple as add one, right? So again, we check. Okay, I think I passed a wrong option there. So R script, there we go. So now if we reload this page, nice. So we have the h1 for our page, we have the count, and then we have a button. Currently, when it's clicked, nothing happens since we haven't wired it up. Now, let's wire it up. What we want with this button, first of all, we want it to be of type submit, because we are going to wrap this whole thing inside of a form. So we change the tag list to a form, and the form is going to have an encryption type or form URL encoded. So let's just check HTML form MDN, and if I just search for the encryption type, you can see that, well, actually application/x www form URL encoded, this is the default value, but well, I always prefer having my options explicit. So we are going to set the encryption type of the form to form URL encoded, since, well, this is a small payload we are going to be working with. If we had an input of type file, we would have used multi-part forms, but in this case, form URL encoded works well. So we set the encryption type to that, and we are going to be using the method post because we are kind of mutating the state in the server, so post is appropriate. And finally, I want this to be posted on slash, like the homepage, right? So the action is going to be slash. So this form has to be posted in the homepage. Yep. So this is it. Now, another thing to note is that in this form, I also want to have the initial count, because that is how we are going to tell the server, I want you to increment from this count and then add one to it so that you get the new count, right? And since the ambiorix applications are, by default, they are stateless. So this request does not know about the next request, and so you have to pass around the value that you want, right? So in our case, we are going to use a hidden input. So inside of this form, just before the button, we are going to have tags subset input, and this input is going to be of type hidden, right? And the content of this input is going to be the current, it's going to be the current count, right? So the value will be the count. So for now, let's just have a 0, though we are going to replace the zeros with, some variable, but yeah. So the value is going to be like the current count, and then we are going to give this a name. So we are just going to say current count, right? So the name of the input is the one which is submitted to the server when you submit the form, right? That is how we are going to access that input's value. So I think this is it. So this is a post form. We have the current count. It's going to be submitted. Now what we need is a handler for this. So actually, let's just view this on the UI. Should have changed totally nothing, because yeah, it's the same UI we had before. Nothing has changed. Now what we need is actually check this out. If we click on add one, this is going to be a 404 not found, and that's because it made the post on slash, but then we haven't handled that post. Like, we don't have a post handler for slash, right? So let's create the post handler. So here we're going to have home post, which is a function. Okay, if I can get this right, function of request and response, and it's also going to be returning some HTML. In fact, it's going to be returning the same HTML as HomeGet, right? The only difference is that this time we are returning the same HTML but with the updated count, right? So let's add some function docs here. So this is going to be a handler for post slash, and of course I would like it to be exported. And since it's going to be returning this same HTML, let's refactor it and put it outside the handlers. So we cut that, and on top here I'm just going to have a function called UI, and this UI function is going to take count, which is by default 0. So like, that is the count that you want to be passed to the hidden input by default. So the count is going to be 0 by default. And now this means we don't need to assign. It's a pretty small function. So instead of having 0 here, we are going to pass the count, right? And then same for the value, we are going to pass the count because that is the current value that we want to be passed. And this is going to be the home UI, right? So this is the home UI, and then at param count, this is going to be an integer. It's optional, and this integer, it's actually the current count, right? Number of button clicks. Yeah, number of button clicks sounds good. And then would I want this to be exported? I think so. So I'm just going to say at export, let's have, this is going to return HTML tools tags, right? And actually, I think that's about it for the UI function. So we have a function which takes in the count, like what do you want to be displayed in the UI. And then it has a form. Inside of that form, we have this hidden input, which contains the current count. And then we have a button, which when clicked will submit this form with the input, right? So we come back here in HomeGet now. What we need is, we just need to send the UI, right? With the default value of count as 0. Then on now home post, the first thing that we need is we are going to pass the form. Our form is URL encoded. So we are going to say pass form URL encoded, and then we are going to pass in the request object. And for now, let's just print that data. And then as a response, let's respond with we want to send the UI by default, like just, you know, the UI as is without changing the value of count. Yeah, that's it. Then let's attach this home post. So we are saying up subset post @ this is going to be handled by home post. Now let's restart the application, and now when we visit the same localhost 3000, when we click on add one, now we don't get the 404 page, right? But looking at our terminal, we see that when we printed the data here, we have a list which has current count, and by default it's 0, right? So this means for me to get the new count, so the new count will be, I want to take data, I want to subset current count, and then obviously you can see it's a string, right? So we need to convert this, or rather to coerce it to an integer. So we say as integer data subset current count, and we are going to add 1. That's going to be our new count. And I actually think the application is done. So let's stop it. Then okay, restart it again. So if I can just reload the page. So now when we click on add one, it's actually not adding. Something is wrong. Let's recheck this. So we have the new count. Actually, let's start with printing the new count. Yeah, let's start with printing the new count. Maybe it's just a small bug somewhere. Continue, add one. Okay, so it's printing. I never passed the new count to the UI. Okay, so here count equals new count, right? Okay, then let's restart this and see if it works. So now we start with 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, blah 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 blah. So you can keep on incrementing the count, and our application is done. That's it. Thank you for watching and have a good day.